Well, good morning, everyone. It is 8:01 a.m. on August 16th, 2024. I'm going to go ahead and call the full board to order. And if we can have roll call.
Certainly. And Mr. Carlton will be joining us, but not until close to 9:30 if we're still going at 9:30. So we're going to delay his executive director report for a while, but I can go ahead and help you with the roll call. So Dr. Zafran.
Present.
Dr. Farmer. Mr. Kokonos.
Present.
Ms. Barnes.
Here.
Dr. Badia.
Present.
Dr. Deloach.
Here.
Dr. DeStefano.
Present.
Mr. Gracia. Gracia, I think okay. Ms. Herod. Okay. Dr. Martinez.
Here.
Ms. Morgan.
Here.
Dr. Naidu. Dr. Nayak. Dr. Quinones.
Present.
Dr. Tibbles. And Dr. Vanderwide. Who did we miss? I've got 9. So I think we need one more.
Mr. Gracia just rejoined the meeting. I think he got kicked out. He's who we need for quorum.
Okay.
So as soon as his mic is enabled, I think we can call him. Okay, I think his mic is enabled now.
Okay. Mr. Gracia, do we have you?
He is calling me on my cell phone, so I will try to work out with him what is going on.
Okay, we can give it another minute or two, and we might have another couple members pop on as well. So.
I see Dr. Tibbles, but it looks like his camera and mic might be disabled. There's a circle slash through both icons for me when I look at it.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Tibbles, for purposes of roll call, I assume you are here.
I'm here, and it looks like I now can turn my camera on.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have quorum?
Dr. Evans, you have a quorum. The time is 8:04 a.m.
Thank you. All right, so our mission is to protect and enhance the public's health, safety, and welfare by establishing and maintaining standards of excellence used in regulating the practice of medicine and ensuring quality health care for the citizens of Texas through licensure, discipline, and education. For my board member report today, I just wanted to highlight something that has been coming up frequently over the last several months, if not last couple of years. As we know, there's a lot of instances and structures out there, new type of business models that we've talked about repeatedly, whether they are hydration clinics, aesthetic clinics, ketamine clinics, whatever they might be. And it brings into question the whole concept of entities that have medical directors, proper supervision, proper delegation, especially when it's not involving prescriptive authority, where a physician is giving prescriptive authority to a nurse practitioner or to a physician assistant. But we are talking about structures and entities where delegation is given for a managing and something like an aesthetic clinic or a hydration clinic or what have you. We've had, again, several instances where bad patient outcomes have happened, and there may not have been a physician on site or immediately available. which may or may not have its own set of nuances. But what it does bring to question, though, is what is the role of making sure that there is proper and appropriate oversight? Now, having just a protocol in place is not sufficient to say that there is an establishment of a physician-patient relationship that needs to be existing and needs to be there prior to actually delegating the act of something that involves the practice of medicine. We have seen, again, structures and entities that try to use the structure of a medical directorship along with protocols in place and establishment of those protocols being used as a means of saying that there's already been that establishment made. And, there may be instances where different set of questions and establishing type of criteria for what is to be done from the standpoint of diagnoses and treatment that may differ from what is in a quote unquote protocol. But what we've seen in all of these is that there really is not an establishment of a physician-patient relationship. And there are very specific guidelines as to what establishes a physician-patient relationship. Now, it does not have to be a face-to-face meeting between the physician and the patient. But just like we have in our telemedicine rules, there are certain criteria that would necessitate that establishment. Now, there's other structures that are out there that have used some interesting means of trying to say that there was an establishment of a physician-patient relationship. There may have been an initial establishment of a physician-patient relationship with a nurse practitioner or with a physician assistant that has proper prescriptive authority. And that initial establishment of a physician-patient relationship was being used as a means of carrying it forward to delegate to another unlicensed individual managing that patient. And then there's the excuse of a medical director now kind of overseeing or taking care where the NP or the PA may have signed off and saying, well, now I'm acting as a consultant or a covering physician. Well, a covering physician in those instances, if they are going to be involved in care of the patient, especially if they're going to be changing the management or changing course of the treatment, that would still necessitate an act of oversight by the physician, whether it's reviewing the record or whether it's actually writing a note talking about why or what they have done in order to change the management of the patient. And in many of those instances, we have not seen those records of a note being written where there's some kind of oversight. What we've heard is, well, the medical assistant or the RN or the LVN changed management or changed course based on protocols, and the medical director may go back and oversee what was done or what was written afterwards. That's what we do when we have prescriptive authority given to an NP or PA, but it is not what we do when you have supervision and delegation to an individual that is not under prescriptive authority. We are acting on those type of instances when we have seen it in some of the ISCs that we've had. The reason I'm bringing it up is because there's alleged confusion out there as to whether this is appropriate or not. Now, in some of our rules that we are revising, we are making it even clearer. But I am just making sure that everyone is aware that the establishment of a physician-patient relationship is something that we will look at. Be careful of just using generic guidelines of protocols as a means or an excuse or as a replacement of doing a proper assessment, diagnosis, and treatment plan. Again, if you're a covering physician, there are certain responsibilities that you must have as a covering physician. Again, just relying on protocols and guidelines and leaving it up to the judgment of someone else without specific and direct oversight, direction, and notation is still not appropriate. So once again, it's something that has been coming up quite a bit, and I felt it was important for us to just highlight the importance of making sure that you are covering our rules and our guidelines as it comes to making sure that you are still practicing medicine, and when you're delegating and supervising, that you're doing so appropriately. All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda.
Dr. Zafran,
yes, sir.
I just have a question?
Yes, Michael. Yeah.
When these Botox parties are being had at someone's house, who has to be there? Who has to be officially have to be on the medical side to be in the house or in the room with the nurses?
Yep. So when you have a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant that has prescriptive authority, there's a lot more latitude as to what they can do. You just got to make sure that they have the appropriate prescriptive authority and the ability and the training to do what they've been delegated to do, especially, like I said, if they have prescriptive authority. If it's not somebody who's an NP or a PA, the physician does not necessarily have to be physically in the room, but they have to be immediately available to address any kind of issues that may arise. Now, what we do have a problem with in these quote unquote Botox parties is who is making the assessment and the proper evaluation as to the appropriateness of the Botox injection, where it's being injected, how many is being injected, all that kind of stuff. That evaluation needs to be done by either a physician or by somebody who has prescriptive authority. And that is where we're seeing shortfalls. That's where we're seeing non-NPs, non-PAs, non-physicians using protocols to say, well, the patient filled some kind of intake, and based on that, our guidelines or our protocols suggest that we would do X, Y, and Z. That is not sufficient, is not appropriate. And Scott, our general counsel, if I'm saying something that needs a little bit further clarification, please jump in. But that's how we read it. They don't have to physically be there. They have to be immediately available. But more importantly, somebody must have established that physician-patient relationship ahead of time and made the determination as to what exactly was going to be done as far as injecting Botox or whatever else it might be. Scott, do you want to chime in beyond that?
And, well, Dr. Zafran, I think you've covered it fully. I mean, that is really the key, that the first step is this can be delegated when appropriate, but the establishment of the physician and patient relationship is the cornerstone upon which delivery of all of these services hinge on. So you've got to meet that, then you proceed to look. So I think you articulated it extremely well, Doctor.
Thank you, Scott. Michael, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Just, you said previous, like something needed to happen with the patient prior.
Correct.
So
remember that when you're injecting Botox, okay, it's not about just injecting the Botox, right? It's about where to inject the Botox, how much Botox to inject, whether the patient is appropriate for the Botox injection. Have they had an allergy? Have they had any issues or concerns? All that kind of stuff. So that decision making has to be done by a licensed physician or a physician assistant or nurse practitioner that's been given prescriptive authority. That determination is where we're seeing shortfalls, where things have not appropriately been done. So what we do see is, again, a generic intake and a quote unquote protocol that is overseen by a medical director that they are utilizing to make that decision. You can't use a protocol to make a medical decision like that. That, again, it's an individual type of decision. What you're doing is you're saying a non-licensed individual is looking at a protocol and making a decision that a physician or an NP or a PA should be doing. And that again, like I said, is where the shortfall is happening. Now, again, if that was already done, does the person have to physically be there? No, but they have to be immediately available to help answer any issues or questions or complications that may arise.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Zafran.
Thanks. Anyone else have any questions? All right.
Just, Dr. I just note for the record that Mr. Grassi and Dr. Vanderweide have joined the meeting and are online. We can see you. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. The next item on our agenda, and we're going to be going fairly quickly through our agenda today. I don't anticipate this to be a long meeting, unlike October and probably December, where we're going to be going over some of the rules in a little bit more detail. But the next item on the agenda is consideration and possible action for dispositions below minimum guidelines. There are none there. Our next item, number 4, is consideration and approval of mediated settlement agreed orders. There is one item there. Is there any extractions or recusals on item number 4? Seeing none, is there a motion on item number 4?
Martinez move for approval.
number 4, which is consideration and approval of mediated settlement and agreed orders.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez. Is there a second?
Second, Morgan.
Seconded, Ms. Morgan, I believe. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of agenda item number 4, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Agenda item number 4 passes. Agenda item number 5. Consideration and possible action for remedial plans. Under there, you have administrative rules. You have crime laws. There are none under crime laws. There are none under impairment. There are none under peer review or state action. And then you have items under standard of care. You don't have any items under unprofessional conduct or late orders. Are there any extractions or recusals under agenda item number 5? All right, seeing none, is there a motion on agenda item number 5?
Motion to approve item number 5, consideration and possible actions for remedial plan, all sections.
Okay,
For
I'm assuming, is that Dr. Stefano or Martinez?
Yes, sir. Just Stefano.
Stefano, okay, thank you. And is there a second?
Barnes, second.
Quinones.
Okay, seconded by Barnes and by Quinones. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Agenda item number 5 passes. Next item is consideration and possible action for agreed orders. Under there, you have administrative rules, crime laws, impairments, peer review, state action, standard of care, unprofessional conduct, and late orders. Under agenda item number 6, are there any extractions or recusals? All right, seeing none, is there a motion on agenda item number 6?
Move to accept.
Bhatia.
All right, motion by Dr. Bhatia to do what? I'm sorry, Devinder, what was that?
So I move to accept as listed under crime laws, impairments, peer review, standard care, unprofessional conduct, and late orders.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
Second it, Kokonos.
Seconded by Mr. Kokonos. Is there any further discussion on agenda item number 6? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Agenda item number 6 passes. Under agenda item number 7, consideration and approval of modification request, termination request orders. Is there any extractions or recusals on agenda item number 7? Seeing none, is there a motion on agenda item number 7?
Move to approve all the items in agenda number 7.
All right, motion by Ms. Barnes. Is there a second?
Second, Morgan.
Seconded by Ms. Morgan. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Agenda item number 7 passes. Number 8, consideration and approval of modification request, termination request of non-public rehabilitation orders. There are none. Number 9, consideration and approval of cease and desist orders. Are there any recusals or extractions on agenda item number 9? Seeing none, is there a motion on agenda item number 9?
Move to approve this cease and desist orders, Morgan.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Martinez, second.
Seconded by Martinez. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Agenda item number 9 passes. Number 10, consideration and approval of NUNC pro-tunc orders. There is one item under there. Is there any extractions or recusals? Seeing none, is there a motion on agenda item number 10?
Motion to approve item number 10, consideration and approval of NUNC pro-tunc orders to Stefano.
All right, there's been a motion. Is there a second?
Bhatia.
Seconded by Bhatia. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, agenda item number 10 passes. Number 11, consideration and approval of agreed resolution orders. There are none. Consideration and approval of consent orders. There are none. Consideration and approval of determination of default. There are none. Consideration and approval of proposal for decision. There are none. I'm going to go ahead and skip number 15 for right now, executive director report, and I'm going to move to 16, which is our medical director report. Dr. Brett.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Good to see you all today. My presentation will be pretty quick. We're doing fairly well with our expert panelists. The modified processes that we have streamlined a lot of things, and we actually have no needs for a number of medical specialties, particularly primary care. So family practice, internal medicine, pediatricians who are not subspecialists. We're doing just fine on those. And actually, we've had to turn away some potential applicants just because we're able to handle those. But we do have some pretty acute needs in some of the subspecialists. Oncology has always been a problem for us over the last 5 years. And if you have any suggestions for oncologists, neurologists, or some of the pediatric subspecialties, cardiology, gastroenterology, some of the standard of care questions become very specific and technical, and generalists are not really able to opine effectively on them. So if you have any of those suggestions or recommendations, please send them on to me. You all have been a wealth of resources in the past for some of these subspecialties, so I do thank you for that.
All right, is that it, Dr. Brett?
Yes, that's it.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for doing all that. Next item is public information update. Tori?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Very brief, like Dr. Brett today, I don't have much to say except to just remind everyone that the next edition of the TMB Bulletin is going to come out next month. And then just kind of one, I don't know if Mr. Carlton will cover it, but just to remind everybody, Dr. Zafran's going to have a big day next month where he's going to be testifying in front of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. He's been invited to do that on access to healthcare. So that's something else that's happening in the public sphere for everyone to be aware of. That's all I've got today.
Thank you, Tori. Next item is report on our physician assistant liaison. And I believe that we have Ms. Corbett. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right.
No reports for today.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next item is consideration and possible action regarding pending litigation.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Scott? Yep. Again, it's kind of a standard report. Quite a few substantial evidence reviews going through. We're doing very well on those. Excuse me. We do have a couple of cases going up to the higher courts, the Court of Appeals. We have one going to the Supreme Court that's being briefed, the Texas Supreme Court, that is, being briefed. The one to the Texas Supreme Court right now deals with what really an issue of what is substantial evidence. Board charged a number of allegations against a physician, and he is trying to say that this was way overcharged, and because there were minimal findings, that it was somehow a frivolous pleading. But our Attorney General is on top of that. We just are going to wait for a decision. I'll inform you when we get it. We've been upheld all the way through the courts, and we feel pretty comfortable that we'll be upheld on this one. The other one that we do have that just recently is being appealed is on a cease and desist order, which has to do with the holding out and someone using the credentials as a physician. This individual had a medical degree, never licensed to practice. There's some holding out issues, so we may get some clarity on that case. But again, until something's decided, there's really not many details because you really can't tell where the court's going to go when it's in the briefing stages only. But once I have more information, I will let you know. The final thing I want to touch on today is something that I think Mr. Carlton is also going to touch on, hopefully if he's able to get here into your meeting before you wind up today. But again, a reminder, there are some pretty high profile cases that occur with you as the medical board. Some people are very vocal. We all know this. They don't like what the medical board is doing. You're picking on the doctor. Why are you doing this? And we get a lot of, and Ms. Sloan has touched on this, and she and I work on a lot of these. We get a lot of media inquiries, and you as board members see media inquiries. Will you, do you have a comment on this? Do you have a comment on that? Of course, I'll do what exactly we ask. You don't respond, you send it to Ms. Sloan and I, we handle it. But I want to use this as a cautionary time, and I know you've all heard this from me before, but I'm going to say it again, and Mr. Carlton, if he does join us, is really going to hit hard on this, and I've asked him if he would kind of serve as a backup, and I know Dr. Zafran, you're 100% behind us on this. When you see issues that come up with doctors that are highly controversial, and you see things in the newspaper, you can go ahead and you can see those, but I think you have to be very careful about sending anything back and forth to one another as board members, because even if it's just, hey, did you see this? What a wild scenario. This is so unbelievable. I can't believe the doctor's saying this about us. Even those kind of things can end up in the public realm. And quite frankly, without going into any detail, and we're not going to discuss it any further, but we've had a request where a couple of screenshots between board members relating to a physician who's in the middle of litigation with us, very, very innocuous, but they had to be turned over because they were a public record. So I am going to very bluntly hit you over the head one more time. Be careful. If you want to talk about that or you see that, that is not back and forth discussion as board members, particularly if the case is pending, whether it's at SOA, whether it's in state court, whether you did an ISC, you've got to be careful because things that you can say, even the most innocuous, if they get out there, can be spun by people. And you all know that Dr. Zafran, particularly because he's the board president, sees this, but you have to be mindful. You may want to talk about it, but don't be sending emails back and forth, particularly when it's about a pending case or something that has been unresolved, because it's pending. You're going to have to decide on it. Even if it's innocuous, it is not a good appearance. It is not a good perception. So just be mindful. And I know I've said this and I've said this, but we've now had a time where we've had to turn over a number of screenshots to an individual that was exchanged by you as board members. And that's all what I have, Dr. Zafran, unless you want to kind of piggyback on
Scott,
that.
actually, I do want you to touch on one other thing, and,
Okay,
and I
yes, sir.
think it's important that there are also efforts, whether it's by independent entities that have an agenda or whatever it might be, to try to impact or affect you as individual board members by saying things in the public domain that is not very nice about you. And these things may be edited and spliced or highlighted in a way that doesn't give an opportunity for context. And we're all very successful individuals in our own practices and so forth. And there's always this feeling of wanting to address or correct or respond to these kind of things when they're out in the public domain. I got to remind all of you that you are all public figures. You are all appointees of the governor. We have accepted and agreed to play in this role. And with that, there comes a certain set of expectations that we have to be able to deal with. And part of that is being in the public domain and possibly having things said about you that may not be very nice, may not be true. In most instances, they're not. But you got to be very careful about wanting to respond and wanting to address it and wanting to defend yourself or whatever it might be, or even other board members wanting to defend the other person or so forth and so on. So Scott, can you just kind of touch on that also?
Yes. And then you kind of took exactly where it's going on that, Dr. Zafran, but that is a good point. And I think the thing that is hard for you all as board members, and we talk about this when you on board with us and we talk about it off and on all the time, but I think Dr. Zafran, and I don't think I've ever said it, but I think what Dr. Zafran said, you need to keep in mind, you are now public figures. You are just not the private individual who owns his or her business, who's, you know, he or she, you've got your medical practice, you work at the, you're not. You've got kind of a dual role. And your public figure side, for lack of a better term, exposes you to things that nobody would say probably about you in a private capacity, that they're going to put in the public paper now and say, well, these board members do this and that. You have to be mindful. You can't respond as Dr. Zafran says, but you have to be mindful. Be careful what you say, because the public doesn't see you. And I pick out anybody's name, any board member. They don't see you as private individual physician, private individual, you know, businesswoman, private individual businessman. They see you as you are the Texas Medical Board, and you're never going to get away from it. So you have to be mindful of that. Remember, you are public figures. What you say related to board business, it can potentially get out into the public light. So you need to be very, very mindful. If, you know, you come into something and see something like that, you can probably presume your fellow board members have seen it at some point, but there is no need to even go back and forth jokingly about it, because it will get spun on you, particularly if someone is antagonized with the board or, you know, believes that they're somehow being persecuted or what have you. So again, I think Dr. Zafran said it perfectly. Keep in mind, you are public figures, and that is your safest protection right now.
Great. Thank you, Scott. All right, moving on. Number 20, report on temporary suspension hearings. The report, all these are in the packet, and unless somebody wants to make a comment or ask questions, stop me and I'll pause. But there's nothing to there's no actions on those. 21, report on suspensions by operation of law. 22, report on motions for rehearing requests. 23, report on cease and desist orders approved by the executive director. 24, report on automatic orders. 25, report of cancellations regarding investigations. 26, consideration and approval of orders to show cause. Do we have any items in there?
There are none.
Okay. 27, consideration and approval of revised, vacated, or amended orders.
There are none.
And there are none there. Okay, so 28, discussion, recommendation, and possible action regarding proposed rule amendments to 22 TAC. There are none there. Where are we? Actually, we're.
Yeah, there
are some there. All right. So as I had said, that there are some proposed rules that are being put out for public comment. Actually, there's none on that one. And let's see. Let me go down to that item real quick. I'm just on my computer. I'm a little bit behind on it.
Yeah, and I can also walk.
Yeah, Scott, why don't you walk us through that, because there's a whole bunch that I want to make sure that we get this right.
Yeah, and Yvette, be ready to jump in with me if you would as well. So
absolutely.
What we're doing on the rules is, as you've heard for basically 2 years now, we're working on them. Well, we have finally got them worked all the way through. What we did was, and again, I'll remind you all in a thumbnail sketch, and also then we'll talk a little bit about what we're asking today and how the process will go forward. But what we undertook about 2 years ago, and the legislature for about the last 2 or 3 sessions has really been pushing agencies, boards, commissions, basically to clean up the rules, to update them. So what we did was, and I say we started with general counsel, but again, we've worked with all of the managers in every department to be sure the rules are reflective. But what we did was, we took the rules from top to bottom. First thing we did is decided what is old, outdated, antiquated, doesn't even apply anymore. We got rid of all of that. A lot of the predecessors to my term as general counsel wrote rules by taking the statute, copying, pasting it, and putting it in a rule. Well, That is not a rule. That's just a statute that's been copied. So we took all of the statutory language that was in the rules and we took it out because it is redundant. Sometimes it wasn't even cut over and pasted correctly, but that is not a rule. What we did in the rules that are new is if we refer to a statute, we cite it specifically in the rules. So the rules have basically shrunk from 40 chapters to 25 chapters. But we have also written them in plain, simple language. We have written them in a way that reflects what really happens in the day-to-day operation as board staff and what happens with you all as board members in executing your functions and duties as the appointees. So that was our overall concept. And now what we're asking today is, and these have been reviewed extensively in Mr. Carlton and through all of the reviews required by law. So what we're going to ask today is to have you vote to publish those in the Texas Register, and they will be open for public comment for 30 days. Now, these are every rule. These are all the medical board rules, and your sub-boards and advisory boards have all given us direction to have you publish their rules. So this will today include acupuncture rules, physician assistant rules, MRT, etc. For the next 30 days or so, people can file comments. When we get those, we'll assemble those, see if there's any significant changes or anything we need to revise. You as board members, and this is where Yvette can jump in because she did a lot of the mechanics of this, you all have been provided copies of those rules for well over a month where you can look at them all and comment, and you can still comment now, but that's where they are. Then what we hope to do is either in October, but definitely in December, is bring those rules to you all to adopt. So they will go into effect at the start of the legislative session. So then you'll have nice, clean, concise, easy to understand rules that are still comprehensive. Then if there's any changes this session comes up, that is all you have to fix or add to. But again, we have strived to make them, the rules reflect what is really done in a very, like I said, clear and concise manner. And that's what we're looking at today. So Yvette, is there anything else you want to add on to that, or anything as far as the kind of the process that we got here?
No, I think the only thing that I would add on is that we have provided the rules to each of the advisory boards as well, because you do have all of those rules to look at. Each of those boards have provided direction to staff for us to bring those rules forward to you for you to direct publication of those rules as well. They were provided the opportunity to give comments, much in the same way that we gave that opportunity to you through the Microsoft form. We really didn't receive very many comments. I got a couple oral comments from the PHP governing board, and then a few comments in writing from the PA board. But other than that, everyone was pretty satisfied with what they were provided. So what we will do after we publish these rules for proposal, for public comment, we will gather all of those comments, recommend any necessary changes if there are any, and then we will provide those to each of the advisory and subboards. They will vote to recommend approval to you, and then ultimately at that board meeting, either in I'm anticipating it'll probably be in December, to be all, very honest with you, just because of the amount of moving pieces that we have here. At that meeting, then we will bring all of that to you and then recommend adoption or, republication with changes or whatever the case may be at that time. So there are a lot of moving pieces. It will take probably about a week or two for us to get everything to the Texas Register if you do direct publication for proposal today, just because the Register literally goes line by line, comma by comma, and we're going to be dumping a couple hundred pages of rules on them. So for us to prepare it and to work with them for their review, it'll probably take about an issue or two. But we anticipate having that done by the end of August, beginning of September, to have those out there for public comment, and then the fun will start.
Yeah, and I do want to jump in one other thing, and I think it's important. And Dr. Zafran, I know you and Brent and I have talked about this a lot, and so has my staff. The thing to be aware of is, board members, and I think this is critically important to understand, is the actual substance of what the rules are today are not greatly changed from what you have now, but they've been put into quite frankly, a very real and understandable and easy to read form. Instead of writing, 17 paragraphs to say, how you perhaps, how an ISC is done, or how Chris's and Amy's staff sends a notice for an ISC, or what the packet is. We've boiled it down to the essence, and that, like I said, 17 steps. The one of the best examples that I can think of is, we used to have a rule for fees, right? You have a rule for all of our fees. It listed every fee of every license type, of every kind of, variation of any kind of license for any kind of professional, all in one chapter. So as a physician, you would go to, say, a physician coming out said, oh, gee, I've got to go make an application. What's the fee? Well, our rule would say you got to fill out all these documents and pay a fee. But the fee, you have to now go back to this rule to look up the fee. And they would do the same thing for a physician in training. Whole set of rules for a physician in training. But if you want to know how much that's going to cost you, go back to this other rule. So there was this ping pong, and our rules did that all the time. A rule would many times cite to 3 other rules to direct the folks where to go. What we have tried to do, and again, we being the GC, have tried to make everything in one comprehensive chapter if we can do it. So, and we started with, here's what you first do. You get licensed. If you get licensed, now you've got to maintain your registration. Here's how you register. Once you're licensed, if any of these things occur, you may be subject to an investigation. Here's how we do a complaint. Here's how we do an investigation. But we put complaints and investigations all in one chapter instead of in 2 different chapters, and then try to cross-reference each other. Because as a regulated community, and even you said this to us as physicians, we've heard it from the physician assistant board, I just want to sit down, and if I have a question about where to apply or how to apply for a license, or how your investigation works, just send me one place so I can read it once and understand, and not get ping pong between 4 different places. And we've done that. The other thing we did was, every different board had a complete write-up of exactly how an ISC was conducted. It was exactly the same in 5 different chapters. So what we did is say, PA board, it's written out in your procedural rules. But we said, if you're the PA board, you're subject to these procedural rules. So we do make those kind of references, but instead of rewriting the entire whole rule for the PAs and for the MRTs, we just say, go look at 170, whatever, or 180, whatever the chapter is, and that'll explain to you how it's going to happen. So this is what we've strived to do, is make this so the regulated community can go and see what they have to do. And that's really was our intent. But we also made it reflect exactly what the real world is. One of the old rules for procedure said, for an ISC, you do roll call, you call the witnesses, you do this, you do that. They go through, basically, I think it was 8 steps. What the new rule says is, you're going to have an ISC, you're going to show up with notice. What the panel's going to do is basically hear the information from both sides and make a recommendation. I mean, the rule's a little more eloquent than that, but it is also not 14 chapters of step 1, step 2, step 3, because some of that wasn't even happening. Quite frankly, they had it written up, the old rule, like you were in a SOA hearing, and that's not how ISCs work. Y'all know that. So we are reflecting the real world in these rules. And that's what we have, Dr. Zafran, and what we would like your board to do is to give us direction for approval to publish those as Yvette outlined, and then we will get to work on it, and we will keep you informed. All the way along the line, and you as board members can still comment, and we gave you access with a link to look at all of the rules before this board meeting, and you will still have it. So if you come across something that you have not sure of, or you might have a suggestion on, just fill out the form that we've asked for, and Yvette, Sarah, Wendy, Kamisha, and I will all get that, and we will take that into consideration when we're, moving forward on the process.
Great. Thank you, Scott. And with that, and again, remember that that 30-day comment period, really what that does is that when we come back in October, if there are substantive changes based on the comments that are there, that necessitates it going out again for public comment. Hence why we're saying December, more than likely, because there's quite a few rules, and we anticipate that there's going to be some, comments, some revisions and so forth, which would be in October. And that gives the opportunity for it to go out again. We still have another board meeting in December, which would give us an opportunity to go ahead and pass it then, unless, for some odd reason, we still don't get it right in December and we still want to make some large changes, then it would have to keep on going until the next board meeting. But hopefully we'll be able to get it all by December. Luann, Did you have a comment, question?
Yeah, Scott, you mentioned you gave us a link for us to review the rules. Where was that link sent to us?
That was via email. It came from me. I sent it. I'd have to find the date, but
yeah.
What it had a link to a portal on your on SharePoint for all of the board members, with a link to all of the rules and then a comment form. I can resend that to you if you'd like.
Yeah, if you would. Yeah, if you would, please. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. With that, I will entertain a motion for publication of all the proposed rules into the public register. Into the public register. So, do we have a motion?
So moved, Quinones.
Moved by Dr. Quinones. Is there a second?
Second, DeStefano.
Seconded by DeStefano. Is there any other further discussion? With that, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, motion passes. And again, thank you, Scott, Yvette, and the rest of the GC team. I know that a lot of work and a lot of time has been put into this. It's going to start a process of hopefully getting us to a point where we can make the rules, as Scott said, look a little bit more meaningful and relevant, and not just a repetition of statute, but gives a little bit more clarity and concisity to it. So we look forward to that process. All right, with that, we are at the area of public comment, and it's past 8:30, so we should be able to do that. Chris, do you want to take that over?
Sure. There is nobody in the room, but yes, if anybody is out there in the Teams universe, I see one hand going up now, and yes, you can. I think you press *5, I believe, to take yourself off of mute. And the rules for public comment are you have 3 minutes, and if you can take yourself off mute. I'm sorry. I see a first name. Is it Lindsay?
Okay, that mic is enabled and the camera.
Okay. You should be able to take yourself off mute and turn on your camera. And when you start talking, we will start the timer.
All right. Yes, sir. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I'm Lindsay Stoops. I'm a doctor of osteopathic medicine, and I'm attending this meeting today due to my concern regarding the handling of my application for my Texas license. I also want to respectfully request more information and also just make you aware of my difficulties so that others may be facing. In August of last year, I was hired by Memorial Hermann and began my application in September. And due to some issues with wrong envelopes and issues like that, my application was completed in March. To follow up, I sent emails and also contacted the call center without any response from anyone. And I ended up reaching out to my state senator Creighton and Representative Toth because I was unable to reach anyone. And about 3 days later, I did get a response, and my application was processed at that time, and that was over 100 days from it being completed in March. I'm currently concerned about the status due to a delay that was an error on my part, which I'd be happy to discuss in private. But again, I'm having issues with communication. So I sent emails on the 1st of July, the 15th, and the 17th. These weren't really actionable. They were more informational from me to my processor. And on the 6th of August, I just requested information about the process or the time frame, and no one has responded. You know, I'm unable to reach anyone by phone. I call the listed number and I'll remain on hold for maybe 30 minutes to an hour, and then it will just hang up on me. I have tried the callback feature as well, and it has never worked for me. So those are just the issues that I wanted to let you know about, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. If someone would be able to contact me with more information, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, this is Dr. Zafran, and I'll respond a
Yes,
little
sir.
bit here. And you know, first of all, thank you for taking the time to come and highlight some of the difficulties that you've had. You know, I can tell you that there have been many instances where the communication sometimes is a little bit challenging, and you know, when you're in the process of getting licensed and wanting to, you know, be able to start working and so forth, it becomes incredibly frustrating. So I understand that. But what I'll tell you is that, you know, we were able to just get funding in the last legislative session to enhance our call center. In fact, I'm sitting here in Austin, and right across the hall from where I'm at is the new call center where it's going to be. And there's supposed to be a number of staff that'll be there, I think 10 or 12.
I think we'll end be up at 12 eventually.
Yeah. So it's a process that I know we've had challenges with. It's supposed to get better now that we've had the funding to be able to hire those folks, and also to make sure that we have these features where the callback feature that you talked about is actually something that would work. Because right now, as it is that if you have a certain number of people in the queue beyond what it's capable of, it just kind of drops you. It hangs up. Which, if I was involved in that, I'd be incredibly frustrated also.
Yes.
You know, I mean, a lot of times it's just a matter of being able to get a hold of someone, and being able to get your questions answered. So I hear you, and again, I can tell you that there are improvements coming down the line between now and actually the end of the year. This is not something that is going to be long in coming. The funding has been there. The folks have been hired to be able to do this, and I believe, Chris, there is going to be a mechanism online or on the new website where there'll be some ability for communication also. Is that right?
Yeah, we are in the process of finalizing a vendor for the website, and it will have a chat feature, and some of that will be AI, but some of it we think can have a person behind it as well. So those are a little bit further down the line, but those are projects that are underway.
Yeah. And yeah, Dr. Zafran, can I jump in for a moment?
Yep.
I've pinged our license manager just to check on this. She is aware of, you know, your application and looking at the issues. So we are definitely aware of that. We're working on it. We have been working on it. We have been noticed of it. The one thing I do want to say, and this is more just for everybody to hear, and this doesn't apply to you, doctor, but on average, our processing time, you have to remember, licensing is a two-step process. We have screening, where you have to file all of your documents. Those individuals basically just assemble documents or tell you when there's anything missing. Once those are assembled, they then have to go to an analyst, and you look at things, you know, any other licenses, is there any, you know, kind of any issues that occurred, you know, is there any arrest history, is there any NPDB reports, was there, you know, are you board certified? There's all kinds of things to look at, but it's a two-step process. So until all the documents are done, nobody's going to be able to move forward to issue a license. But once once the process goes in and all of the documents are submitted, and it's a lot of work on the physician side of it when you're applying. We understand that. Our average processing time right now is 19 days on a standard application, assuming everything is there, it doesn't have to be reviewed or anything of that nature. So yes, we do hit problems occasionally. Sometimes it's documents, sometimes, honestly, we sometimes, and I'm speaking for licensure manager, we have sometimes your schools or the third parties that have to provide us documents, they delay. Then you and I have to kind of tag team them and say, get these things in because the doctor's waiting. But do know, doctor, that we are aware of it. Our licensure manager has heard what you're saying today, and we've already have had some, information going back and forth. So we're well aware of this.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, and to highlight, like I said, again, that in general, the communication part with the board, even if it doesn't involve licensure, is something that I'm foreseeing that the public and our licensees in general will see a significant improvement on it. Like I said, during COVID, a lot of people left and moved to other industries and so forth. So there was a period of time where hiring the right number of people and so forth was a little bit of a challenge, but now we've been able to rectify a lot of that. So there should be some significant improvement, but I'm glad you've gotten licensed now, or at least in the process. Are you at Memorial Hermann in Houston?
Yes, I'll be starting actually at a spring location as soon as I get that license.
All right, great. Well, I'm in the Memorial Hermann system, so if you have any
Lovely.
issues, feel free to reach out to me. But welcome on board. Hopefully, we'll get you licensed soon and get that resolved. But thanks for coming in and giving us some comment. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else that is online that is wanting to make a comment, if you can raise your hand or push *5 on your phone. We'll pause for a minute here, a few seconds at least. Okay. Not seeing anyone. I think we can move on.
All right. It's 9 o'clock. I know that Brent is tied up until 9:30. So Chris or Scott, did you guys want to highlight maybe the executive director report on behalf of Brent?
Why don't we first do the consent agenda and then go back to Brent's report, Dr. Zafran, because that's the last item that we need, I think, a vote on. So that would be good since you're kind of tight on your quorum today. Why don't we do the consent agenda if you don't mind, sir?
And I'm presuming that we have all our reports in?
I believe they are all there. Double check with my folks, but I'm pretty sure.
They are, Scott. They are.
Okay. Yeah, if you would, Dr. Zafran. It's only going to take 2 minutes, but that gets all of your business done that you have to vote on just in case.
Okay. All right. So there was one other item, 36, which is discussion, recommendation, of possible action relating to personnel matters. I don't believe there's anything there.
There is not.
I know that there's going to be a review, the annual review of our executive director by the board. I didn't think it would be nice and fair to do that while Brent's not here. So I've moved that to the end of the year. But with that, the next item is the consent agenda, which is discussion action items to be considered at any time to the full board in session. And there are 2 items there. And I will entertain a motion for those 2 items under the consent agenda.
Move to approve the items under the consent agenda. Morgan?
Okay, so that is consideration and approval of the June 21st, 2024 medical board meeting minutes and action items. And number 2, committee reports and the consideration approval of minutes and action items of committees meetings during the board meeting. And that was a motion by Ms. Morgan. Is there a second?
Second, Quinones.
Okay, seconded by Quinones. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, so the consent agenda items pass. With that, now going back to the executive director report, Chris, Scott?
Sure, and I'm going to pass over to Mr. Estrada for the budget report, and we will start with that one.
Good morning, board members. I'll be brief with my remarks. So we are 2 weeks into the fiscal year ending for fiscal year 2024. Our current budget execution stands at about 99.2%. That leaves about 150K left on the books that we are currently looking at options to spend by the end of August. Our revenue collections through the end of July were just over $37 million. And I ran the numbers yesterday, and that put us closer to $40 million, which is about 3% more than what we collected last year. So as always, we're on trend with our revenue projections. And then finally, I'm in the process of submitting our legislative appropriations request. I have, 4 hours and 59 minutes to get that submitted. So you do have a draft document available to you in Laserfish. And I do want to point out that those numbers are a little dynamic and fluid, as I will be updating them to the last minute to make sure we're positioned in a strategic advantage for our LAR. But just so y'all are aware of what's going on with our legislative appropriations request, the Legislative Budget Board granted us an additional $1.5 million on top of our core agency operations going into fiscal year 2026 and 2027. We have 7 exceptional item requests that we will be focusing on this year, with the majority of that request being on the modernization of our information technology system. That will be our biggest ask. And then finally, I've also put at the very bottom of that report some revenue projections. If our revenue projections continue on trend as they have historically, then that'll put our what we receive from those collections at 83 to 85%. And even if I put conservative revenue collections, that does put us at 90%, which is still good for us because that'll keep us within line with what we can spend based on what we collect. And then the last number I have on that report for conservative revenue collections plus, we do not collect the full max of our fees that we're authorized to collect. We're at 95%. So if we did end up increasing that to 100%, that would drop down what we receive from those collections to 85%. So overall, we're in a strong position and have valid justification for our exceptional item requests. And we should be meeting with the Legislative Budget Board and Governor's Office to joint budget hearing August 28th. And we'll keep everyone up to date and informed of that. Pending any questions, I'll hand it back to you, Chris.
Yeah, let me just kind of add in real quick. And first of all, thank you for doing a great job managing the budget. And, these legislative action requests are so important because when I talked a second ago about the call center and about our website revamp and stuff like that, these are very impactful from the standpoint of how we're able to provide the service that we need to provide for our licensees. And, without these funds and without the ability to make sure that we're able to retain our staff, especially with the cost of living and inflation and so forth and so on, so that we can have folks who can answer the call center or, revamp the website to where it's more meaningful and stuff like that is key. We were able to get quite a bit of that back in the last legislative session, thanks to Representative Bonin, who's the chair of appropriations, and Senator Kolkhorst and others on the Senate side for helping us get our funding. And now we are putting some of the other requests in for the next legislative session so we can finalize a lot of the things that we do need to make sure that we're able to provide that service. So very important, very critical. We are 19 board members, but all we do is essentially help finalize the passage of rules, look at the disciplinary process, look at the licensure process. But behind us are a team of personnel in the board that is critical in making sure that the day-to-day function of things pass and move forward. And without the proper budget and funding in place, it's very difficult to do that. We're also competing against other agencies that may have the ability to pay certain amounts that are able to lure away our lawyers or our staff. So being able to match that, being able to have that appropriate funding is critical and important to make sure that we maintain that staff and the ability for us to deliver the service to our licensees. So once again, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The other items on Mr. Carlton's list, one is a legislative update. I don't know, Ms. Sloan, do you have anything on that?
I don't have anything beyond just everyone kind of knowing about Joey already covered the LAR. That's kind of the big thing. And then the interim hearing that's happening on September 18th. So that's about it.
Okay. And I think we've talked about the rules. Scott, anything else to add on communication? We already covered it.
No, I think we've covered it well, Chris. Thank you.
Okay, the last item that I have in your materials under this agenda item at DPRC yesterday, we did have a conversation about a couple of tweaks to processes involving PHP. For those of you that were not in the DPRC meeting yesterday, staff, a group of staff, including general counsel and PHP staff, and Dr. Doyle as well, and Mr. Bernardo, were able to kind of do some brainstorming around an issue that we've had with a few outliers who are, I think the words Dr. Zafran used were gaming the system. So you've got a situation where an individual has been referred to PHP and did not cooperate with PHP and had to be returned to the board. And at some point during their process, maybe after they get that letter in the mail that they've been set for an ISC, they decide to go back to PHP. Then they use that information at the ISC to say, well, I'm back in PHP, everything's peachy keen. And then as soon as the case is dismissed, they stop cooperating with PHP again. And so we've discussed a couple of ways to approach that. And we got some direction from DPRC yesterday. Just wanted to share with the rest of the board members, and if you all have questions as well, obviously. But the materials are in there. There's a memo, an example order, and then a copy of the procedures for drug testing. Basically, what we're proposing to do is put some teeth into the interim screening agreements, so that somebody is referred back to the board from PHP prior to getting through the investigative process and going to an ISC. They're offered the opportunity to sign an interim screening agreement so that they are continuing to screen. Individuals that don't sign that agreement are normally evaluated for potential temporary suspension, because these are situations where we have concerns for patient safety. The direction from DPRC was that we make it clear on the front end with these individuals that if they don't sign that interim agreement and comply with it, they may well find themselves in front of a panel. Doesn't mean they're going to get suspended, but they may find themselves in front of a panel, and that would be an option. We also revised the motions that are made to DPRC during the PHP process to clarify this. If you're on an ISC, you may see that reflected in a summary of allegations, where when PHP refers someone back to the board, they may ask DPRC to move that the person be accepted back to the board for referral with specific direction that they not be allowed to be privately referred back to PHP. Obviously, as an ISC panel and as a board, you don't necessarily have to follow that direction, but the idea would be that at least you've kind of understood this is what was presented by Dr. Doyle to DPRC and what DPRC made a motion, so that you've kind of understand that there's obviously that brick wall of confidentiality. There's information that PHP has that they can't share with the board, but at least that direction would be clearer. And so then finally, the last item is that on the other end of the scale, the people that maybe are not trying to game the system, they're actually committed to their recovery, but maybe for whatever reason, when they were initially referred to PHP privately or a self-referral, they just didn't quite have it together, and they are ready now. They are genuine, giving staff the authority to check in with Dr. Doyle, make sure the individual is still a good fit to go back to PHP, and then to be able to draft a short order. I mean, this is somebody who was given the opportunity to self-refer or was privately referred by an ISC panel and didn't quite make it. So now it's going to be a public order, but does give staff that opportunity to draft that order and get it signed, so that we're not waiting for the ISC and the ratification to get that started back up for somebody who really does want to be in the PHP program and monitored and safely practicing. So the materials are there. We had a pretty lengthy conversation at DPRC yesterday, but obviously wanted to give the rest of the board an opportunity to ask questions and if they had any concerns about this direction to staff.
All right, thank you, Chris. Are there any questions, concerns? All right, well, with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Botcha.
Second,
Second.
Stefano.
All right, motion made by Dr. Bhatia, seconded by DeStefano. Is there any further discussion? All right, just before I say all those in favor, I know that we talked a little bit the other day about a possible in-person meeting. I don't think we will be able to do that between now and the end of the year. But we do tentatively have the boardroom, the big new boardroom, reserved for March of 2025. So we haven't made a formal decision on that yet, but tentatively speaking, that has been reserved for us. And possibly, hopefully, that'll be our first actual in-person meeting for that fiscal year. All right. So with that, all those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right. We are adjourned at 9:11 a.m. on August 16th, 2024. Thank you, everyone. And please have a nice, good, pleasant weekend.
Thanks.
Thank you.